Hello and welcome to The Print. I am Risha Chitlangia, and today with us we have noted social activist Nikhil Dey, who is the co-founder of Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan. Mr. Dey was recently recognized as one of the international anti-corruption champions for 2023 by the US government for his work to build peasant and worker empowerment campaigns and also expose corruption in the delivery of government services. Welcome to The Print, sir.
Thank you.
And first of all, congratulations for the recognition. You were one of the 11 people who were recognized by the US government. So, what does this recognition mean?
So, the recognition, there were 11 people, as you say, from around the world, and it was where people and anti corruption agencies and media people have made a big effort to expose corruption. I think the particular recognition that was given in my name, but actually that recognition is for the work done by large collectives of people, is that ordinary people are the best anti-corruption activists. If you give information in their hands, they are the ones who will fight corruption. And I think in India, public audits, social audits, transparency, the right to information law has empowered every single individual to fight corruption. So you don't need some champion. It actually is a recognition for every champion who has raised their voice against corruption and to empower them through these legal mechanisms. And in that whole group of 11 people, I think this was unique, that a grassroots set of efforts over a long period of time was being recognized.
So, you've been associated with the peasant and worker empowerment campaigns for over 3 decades now. What has been the journey like, sir? What were the challenges in this?
So challenges are firstly for peasants and workers to have a voice. So the reason that we are part of an organization, built an organization, is individually they all know their problems, but nobody listens because the voice of a peasant or a worker is very, it's hardly heard. It hardly even reaching the media. You have to be large enough in numbers. Reaching further than that, to be heard in policy is even more difficult. So the biggest challenge was to be heard, and to be heard effectively. So in other words, even now an ongoing battle is, yes, transparency. So our right to know is something that we've won, and not just for peasants and workers, but won for the whole country. Every citizen, even middle class people, use it a lot. And India's Right to Information campaign is celebrated across the world. And even though it's now being undermined because there are amendments and there are various things and there's poor implementation, even so, lakhs of Indians every year file for that. So the opening up of these legal mechanisms that made our fundamental constitutional rights real and gave peasants and workers that voice. Now, in that journey, it's a long and tedious journey. There are dangers, of course. From time to time, various groups amongst us have been attacked. There have been threats all the time. Obviously, when you fight vested interests at any level, they respond. So there are various components one is trying to build up so that generations to come, poor people, middle class people, citizens, ordinary citizens, can actually have the capacity to fight corruption, to fight inefficiency, to fight arbitrary exercise of power. So you might know more than 100 people who have raised RTI questions and pursued them and tried to fight corruption have been killed in India. A whistleblower law was passed. That at the families of those people who were killed came to Delhi and made sure that law was passed, and it's still not been implemented. The rules have still not been put, it's still not been notified, and that's more than 8 years ago. So it's a constant struggle. People are fighting, they are dying, they are being pilloried, they are winning battles for many others, and things are improving. And they can only improve in large scale programs if everyone is empowered. because they are the ones with the biggest vested interest in seeing that the program runs well, the entitlement reaches, the schools run better, the hospitals run better. Whose interest is it?
Yeah.
Yours and mine.
Yes.
So you and I should be empowered, not some inspector alone, because the inspectors actually did not. Supervisors and inspectors have failed. That's why we are asking for this.
So, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, your organization was at the forefront of the Right to Work campaign that led to the enactment of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in 2005. How do you analyze its implementation over the years? And especially, sir, NDA government's, during NDA government's tenure, how do you assess or rate the performance, sir, on implementation of NREGA?
So I will say that NREGA came in with huge debates across the country amongst policymakers. Will it work? Will it not work? Will it mean money down the drain? Will it be something that destroys the backbone of the economy? And I think it has now been acknowledged across the board that NREGA has helped us through many crisis periods. Any state in a crisis, let's say there's a bad drought, NREGA is crucial for them to come out. When there was the economic downturn across the world, what saved India? People agreed it was NREGA. Gave people that minimum level of employment. COVID came.
Yeah.
What saved rural India and urban India's people who were walking back? NREGA, that they had employment there. And the government, in NDA's time, your question is, yes, this was passed during UPA's time, but even during UPA's time, towards its last years, they started giving less money.
Okay.
It's the only law in the country that is not budget constrained. It says anyone who asks for work up to 100 days, it's constrained by that, should get work within 15 days. It's a guarantee. But that is undermined by not making enough money, giving it late, giving it slowly, and that's a problem that continues. It started in the last years of the UPA, it continued through years of NDA. And then there was a statement from the Prime Minister that this is only a program of digging pits and it's a program that will be a monument to failure. But that same government during COVID increased the NREGA budget by 50% because they knew that this is something, there was no other method to save lives. And now the NDA government itself says, of course, we stand by NREGA, we implement it better. That's what they say. We feel there are many implementing steps that still have a long way to go. We are big supporters of NREGA, but we are not supporters of bad implementation. We are the ones who point out the shortcomings, and we have been looking for solutions. And that's why it comes back to that same thing, that the recognition of this work in India around social audits, public transparency, responding to grievances, accountability is now recognized across the world as being the way out. And that's something that we feel it's there. NREGA is the only law in the world, first law in the world that had statutory requirement of social audit. You had to do it. So I would say three things for implementation. Number one, you need to really fund it like it deserves to be funded, which means that if it needs more money, immediately provide that money. Then you will really be giving people that guarantee.
Okay.
Number two, people have taken to it. Yes, there is shortcomings. Yes, there is collusion. But if you can bring accountability on your own workforce, meaning the engineers, meaning the Gram Rozgar Sahayaks, meaning the program officers, the BDOs, the program will run. The system is there. But if you keep attacking and finding fault with the worker is a worker. There's a supervision responsibility over that. So that's number two. And number three, even if that fails, you really want to place the burden on people, empower them. Make social audits effective, make transparency total, act on their complaints, and NREGA will work like nothing better. The last thing I'd like to say is times are also changing. From the time when NREGA was passed in 2005, we are now in a stage 18 years later. So it's matured, it's here to stay. but it can meet all kinds of requirements. So new categories of work should be found.
Okay.
Because there are many places where you have dug enough ponds, you have made enough roads, you've covered with tree cover. So give new kinds of work which are required. Have an urban employment guarantee also. Actually strengthen NREGA, so that's rural or urban. Get 100 days wherever it is that you need it, because then even the workforce which is in urban areas is often underemployed. Do very creative works. In a city, there are so many green jobs. We are facing this whole problem with climate. NREGA is one of the biggest potentially climate mitigating programs in the world, because it does green cover, it's got carbon sink, do those kinds of works.
But do you think the policy should be changed now? There is a time to review the NREGA, because see, some would say there is a section, there is a view among policymakers, a section of policymakers, that it was a great initiative. It provided employment. It still provides employment to poor and marginalized section of the society in rural areas. But we need to maybe reimagine with the technology that's there now available. So do you feel that there is a need to relook at the entire thing?
Relook at the entire thing means not in its fundamentals. The guarantee of work is very essential. It's, if someone is earning more than that, they won't come to NREGA. NREGA is an indicator to you that you are not in the economy earning more. You're not even, NREGA doesn't even pay the minimum wage in many states. Actually, it should. That's a fundamentally wrong part of it. But still, people are coming in huge numbers to NREGA because they need that work. You must see it as an infrastructure building program. It's not digging pits and filling it up. It's building a road. It's giving you tree cover. It's giving you fodder. It's giving you a check dam. It's increasing the capacity for well. It's recharging it so that you can get 2 crops out of it. So the understanding of rural India, of course, innovate. Of course, you need innovation, including technology. Anything that will help the program is great, should be used. And what we are calling as great development, huge infrastructure programs, our airports, our more and more flights. Are we counting what we are costing the environment in that? So in every development framework of thinking about it, policymakers need to think, how much does this program cost in terms of environment, in terms of social costs, how much does it benefit? So NREGA has great scope to actually be a creative, innovative program in today's times.
So the Adar-based payment system that Centre has made mandatory from January 1st for workers to avail work under NREGA, opposition parties and activists have criticized it, that it will lead to more deletion of workers from the list. But the system, sir, there have been a lot of leakages in the system. And do you feel that ABPS has been able to fix this to some extent, that duplication of jobs, fake job cards, ghost workers, this will address this problem?
Not at all. ABPS, even the ministry says its efficiency is some 0.5% more in the speed of payment or in the accuracy of payment. Workers, duplication of job cards have been dealt with much earlier. The first thing to recognize is, even though ABPS has a name called Adar-based payment system, it is not Adar, nor is it the linking of Adar to the job card alone. The ministry says that 99% of workers have Adar. The ministry says more than 98% have been linked with their job cards. So those two things have already, if you wanted to use Adar for deduplication, have already done so. A false identity, for more than 15 years, people are being paid through their bank accounts or post office accounts. So there is no question of a false identity. Otherwise, you have a false identity with your bank account, and there are many other things that are required there. The Aadhaar-based payment system is a convenience for the government to use a particular payment system for all its various programs, so that they will get it at one spot. And it is not just activists and political parties, it is leading to the deletion of job cards. And you can ask people, because people say, I was working last week, Now suddenly this mandatory requirement has come and my job card is deleted. I can't work. So the people who we need to ask are the people who are affected. And we have had unprecedented numbers of job cards that have been deleted. So what is it? Why is that happening? It's not that government is saying delete job cards. Government is saying make sure everyone is ABPS enabled. ABPS enablement is not easy even for the administration to do in certain areas because it requires a whole process in the bank. It's not even just the administration. So what do they do when they have that huge pressure like you have any time that you have pressure? They try and eliminate the problem. So eliminate the job card. My things have become much better. I retain those job cards who have ABPS. I make an attempt with some others. If I don't succeed, I just eliminate them. What does that do to that worker? To their fundamental right to live, to work? So again, I think very often those of us who speak English, who are in policy making circles, need to recognize what it is we are doing with very vulnerable people in the name of convenience. And your question was, does this lead to elimination of duplication? No, because it's already done. You should ask the government, are there duplicate job cards? That's already been done by government. They should take credit for that and lay it to rest. They should not put this on that. Does it mean that false identities have not been done? Those are already taken care of. Does it mean that you're making people more Adar, giving more Adar? No, because you've already done it. What is this? It's a system of convenience for yourself. And if it is leading to greater efficiency, keep doing it. But don't exclude. You cannot exclude and you cannot lead people to go through a situation where their job card is removed and they can't work.
Okay. Are you planning to approach the government now that the government has made it clear that they will not further extend the deadline? So
yeah, absolutely. We have approached the government. We will approach the government. The government is here to listen to us. We are here to raise. We don't have any vested interest against ABPS. What is our interest? Our interest is to see what's happening on the ground and bring it to the notice of government. And if the government doesn't listen, then we've had last time a 60-day dharna, at which time at least ABPS was extended, even though the other technology systems which were causing problems were not. So at least ABPS deadlines were extended. We have a fundamental problem with making these mandatory. That's something that needs to be understood.
Okay. So you, along with other social activists, you campaigned for the right to information, that led to the enactment of the RTI law. How do you see the RTI Act as it exists today? And do you think that amendment that the law has gone through in the recent years, has diluted it and defeating the purpose, the basic purpose of the law, sir?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. I think India's right to information law was and is celebrated around the world. Unfortunately, beginning with the government that passed it, they wanted to amend it, to weaken it, not strengthen it, because we would have all welcomed it. But obviously, and it was the big heroes of the RTI Act are its users. Millions of people who use it every year. 7 to 8 million people use it every year. And yet, over and over again, there were attempts to amend it. And then finally, a set of amendments succeeded in doing what? Weakening the commission, the highest body that could hold anyone to account on information. And the commission, as the law is designed, is supposed to stand on the side of the information seeker, not even be neutral. They actually have to act on behalf of making greater transparency, given our constitutional structure. That is a very debilitating amendment to begin with, but many people don't even reach the commission. They fight their battles. They don't get their RTI information in 1 month, they spend 3 months, 5 months, but they get it. And that's so much better for the country. Who can argue against that? Yes, there are some arguments about RTI. So RTI, there's a lot of frustration amongst RTI users and activists, yet they keep at it. That's the great thing about the citizens of our country. And there is no class in the country who will not support the RTI. There's no group in the country that will not support RTI, because who will not support greater transparency? But the second set of amendments that have come, which to my mind are almost like the death knell of the RTI, which have come under the guise of another law,
Hmm.
in the Digital Data Protection Bill, Personal Data Protection Act, which are now the rules are going to be notified. In that is an amendment of the Section 81J of Privacy of the RTI Act.
Hmm.
That is like a death knell, because the RTI Act protected privacy, but put it in the context of what is public information that affects public interest, and what is some privacy that is just affects me personally. The RTI Act had a duty to, and it did make that very wonderful balance between information in public domain and private information. And it made it clear that that information which nobody has anything else to do with is private and should not, why should I know anything about it? But if you are affecting someone else's interest, obviously that information cannot be private anymore. You are affecting public interest. That should be made public. And so that amendment, because it says anything that identifies a person, will make anti-corruption effect terrible, because if I want to expose something, someone is involved. Even the naming and shaming, leave alone taking action on them. And that bill says, no, I must now take their permission to use that information. So, if let us say I am tomorrow in Narega saying how many trees were planted in a particular village. Fair enough, so many trees. If I say who were the engineers who planted it, when I find there are no trees, I cannot put that information out. Who are the engineers who said so many trees were planted? Who were the people who were supposed to have been at work? That's a kind of, I mean, that's the broader sense, but everything else to do with, and it would affect the media, it will affect activists, it will affect journalists, it will affect academics. All of them, because they all have to use personal information in the public domain. So those two amendments have made things very, very difficult. But the Indian citizens' demand for democratic rights, for transparency, for participation, all of which RTI enables, has shown that it's a movement that's taken root amongst people. So you can amend a law, you cannot amend a movement. A movement will keep going. And I believe that people will keep fighting for information. They will say we had it better earlier. They will make sure it comes out. And this is a back and forth exercise between those who hold power in our name and us saying hamare naam par. The slogan of RTI was hamara paisa, hamara hisab. Every pie of the government spends is our money. We have to take the accounts. So we have to take the information.
Okay. So civil society groups have been part in the previous government. They were advising the government, and they were also part of the erstwhile National Advisory Council. To now, do you think that civil society groups have lost their voice?
I think the government has lost a big input. Civil society people have not lost their voice. Civil society people are voicing things. Where they voice dissent, they are even being jailed unfairly, in my opinion, many of them. There is much less space for dissent, and that's a big loss for the government. People who in our own system will point out the shortcomings, or if you get a different view, you will get much better policy. Who will point out shortcomings, they will not allow that pressure to build and the pressure to burst at the end. Much better for a society. Multiple voices are better, and shortcomings will be brought to light so you can act on it. So I think the loss is for government. Civil society has not lost its voice is being curbed and curtailed. The space for protest, while some of our people were on the National Advisory Council, some people associated with us, we were on the streets. We never lost our voice. Even when we were within those bodies and being invited, we were talking to people, we were protesting against things we didn't like. There were many things that happened at that time which we were not in agreement with. We made our voice heard. We are not asking for money in return. We are not taking salaries for that. We are out there in Janta ka Parliament, Janta ki Sadak, and we are making our voice heard. So it is very not just sad for democratic rights, but it's sad for policy in the country. And it's something hopefully people will come to realize, but even if they don't realize, people's voices will not be curtailed.
Okay. And so the government's move to cancel FCRA licenses of NGOs, is it impacting civil society's work on the ground?
Absolutely is. So it's again this question of selective use. Everyone feels, so the MKSS takes no foreign funds. So MKSS is not individually impacted, but we watch the entire environment. What are the voices that raise, so anyone who is walking and towing the line of the government, they can continue. The Foreign Contribution Regulation Act amendments, as well as the way it's being implemented, has certainly curtailed the space for civil society to do the work that it should. There are large numbers of licenses that have been removed. I want to make it clear that the MKSS takes no foreign funds. So we are not personally affected, but we are affected as a society, as everyone else is. Because civil society organizations are working in the environment, working on policies of disability, of marginalization, of nutrition, and today the government doesn't want any of these questioned. So if there's a civil society organization, an NGO that's doing that, one side will be that it will feed people. It will give more nutrition. The other side, it will say these are our shortcomings. And it will bring it to light, and that should help us overcome those shortcomings. And the standards that exist in this is that the corporate sector is encouraged to bring money in. That means mining, that means a whole lot of that money being spent, and no curtailment of it, it's being brought in, and that's called foreign domestic investment. And when money comes in to actually help your most marginalized people, money comes in to raise issues which are being raised all across the world. If a corporate entity, multinational, can work in multiple nations, so can civil society organizations. And they may be raising issues of something that happens in Europe and America and India and South Asia or Africa. So these are, if we have globalization, then we must allow globalization on all sides. And the other double standard is that suddenly the area where you should curtail it in political activity, there is an amendment made so that foreign companies who have an office here can contribute. Now look at that influence. So companies are being given, even multinational companies are being given huge opportunity to influence. And civil society that works for not-for-profit, the not-for-profit sector is being curtailed. So you are giving a combination of freedom to influence with your motivation as being profits. And the people whose motivation is the general good are being curtailed.
Okay. So your organization worked very closely with the Congress, whether it was for right to information or for the rural employment scheme. Now, sir, how do you see Congress party's decline over the years?
So we worked very closely with any government who would work with us, and we engage with governments. Today, there is, till a few days ago, there was a Congress government in Rajasthan. So it was, I don't know. So decline and not being there is a different political evaluation, which I'd rather not give. I just say that our role is to engage. If governments invite our views, we give them. We participate. Even with this government on NREGA, the BJP government now, on NREGA, we keep giving our views. We've even been called. We have given our views. We are frank about it. We were frank before. We are frank today. So the parties, I would say that there is, however, much less space today than there was before. One of the very important measures that we brought in we pushed for and came in was the pre-legislative consultative process, meaning any legislation before it comes to Parliament should be widely discussed with all segments of society, not just us. And we will participate in it. Again, government doesn't have to pay for it. It will all be done, and government will get so much better views. Finally, Parliament has a prerogative to pass it. But today, even Parliament is not getting space to properly debate things. Parliament is not getting space in its standing committees. We've gone repeatedly to standing committees and spoken our views, but that space is also curtailed. So, the decline again of it's not a question of a decline of a Congress party or something else. It's a decline of a certain space that was there, a faith in people, an encouragement of participation. And that we feel, yes, it is true that the UPA years there was much more space. In the NDA years there has been much less space. But even if we are not invited, we are citizens. We are the voters, we are the sovereign, we will speak.
Okay. And yeah, your organization again, worked with Rajasthan government when Congress was in power, and regarding the social benefit for gig workers. Are you working with some other states on this?
We are working with any state who will work with us.
But right now,
so right now, yes, Telangana, we have just done a meeting where again, a Congress government is there, but the Chief Minister himself called a meeting on the gig legislation, said they wanted to make sure that Telangana did use the Rajasthan model, but even improved on it. And that is one of the first legislations in the world, the gig workers law. It will take time to come into effect, and it's great that one of the first measures that Telangana took up was this. And there was a promise that in the next assembly session in Telangana that law will come. In the improvements, people who came there said many things related to their grievances that they have with companies which are not heard need to be made stronger. They said that their emoluments that they get, how much commission, that needs to be looked at. So maybe that will be addressed because they also came to that meeting. We need to see what the draft will be. But if the minimum standards of Rajasthan are maintained, which is that social security rights of gig workers are in law, and that every transaction has a social security measure to it, it will, for future gig work all across. Gig work is not just an Ola, Uber or delivery. It's being done even in media. It's being done all kinds of places. But every person who works has a social security right. If a segment of that can be put in, that's a very big principle that's being put in. And we are working with a modern economy where platforms are playing a bigger and bigger role, digital platforms. That law uses that by empowering workers, because they can get to know how much they work. They can get to know not just a company saying this is what you have to do, but them knowing what the company is doing. So it's their own information rights vis-a-vis companies, their own registration rights vis-a-vis digital registration. So those measures are fundamentally important measures that we hope will go in Telangana. We were asked by Karnataka also to give inputs. We've given there, again, a Congress government. We know Chhattisgarh is discussing it, which is a BJP government. We will make every attempt to give the same views, because for us, every democratically elected government should actually reach out, and it's our duty to put it before them. And gig workers, they will do it as well. So
the Rajasthan government also came up with 3 other laws: right to pension, right to health, and minimum urban employment. So do you think other states should follow this?
Yeah, so those are 3 very important legislations. Ever since COVID, we've been talking about urban employment guarantee, because we saw what happened with our urban workers and how important it was for them to have some fallback. And actually, urban employment guarantee can be made into a very creative measure. So Rajasthan has been the first state. 4 or 5 other states have schemes, but it's well worth thinking about, and during these upcoming elections, we will appeal to parties to make it a national manifesto. Another very important thing is pensions. Social security pensions have never been a law. So they were made part of the minimum income guarantee law in Rajasthan, and they had an automatic increase per year put into law. So that's a very important step, and we saw that the BJP for the first time, otherwise our central social security pensions are 200 rupees and 300 rupees a year. For the first time, the BJP in Rajasthan, in their manifesto, said a minimum in pension of 1500 rupees social security. So it's becoming an issue, but we hope it will become a legal right in that sense. And finally, the right to health, again during COVID. We all understood how important equal access to all to healthcare, good, reliable healthcare, where the state takes a guarantee. We saw during COVID what happened to private institutions. So the state guaranteeing people's right to health. Rajasthan took that step along with its well-known Chiranjeevi insurance, health insurance scheme, which with universal coverage. These will all be trendsetters. And again, we hope that people will improve on them in other states, but these are all laws that are here to stay.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for speaking with The Print.
Thank you.